Happening now. We want to welcome viewers from across the United States and around the world. This is the EdTech Situation Room. Good morning, good day, good evening. This is EdTech Situation Room episode number 235 for October 13th, 2021. My name is Jason Neifer, and I am the Assistant Director and Curriculum Director of the Montana Digital Academy, which is Montana State Virtual School, located right here on the fabulous University of Montana campus in Missoula, Montana. And joining me tonight, as always, good evening, Dr. Wes Fryer. How are you tonight, sir?
Good evening, Jason. I am well. We avoided tornadoes that swept through. Yes, there were tornadoes late night, like 4:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock. This morning. So it's cooler. It's like 20 degrees cooler, and a little bit more rain. And fall is really feeling like it's here. So I am the Technology Integration and Innovation Specialist at the Cassidy School, teaching media literacy to 5th and 6th grade students and being an advisor and not teaching Spanish this year. So it's good times.
And then we had an awkward pause. I don't think we're here to just stare at each other, Wes. What is the EdTech Situation Room all about?
Well, for 234 episodes, we have been gathering here on Wednesday nights to talk about the tech news through an educational lens. So we have gathered a bunch of links, which you can find by pointing your browser to edtechsr.com and clicking links. There's a large Google Doc there, which has a number of things from the past week or so. And our topics tonight include Apple, Google, social media, hardware, things that make you go, which I think is Jason's new headline or category, by the way. AI, tech correction, space, the miscellaneous category, which is always a roll of the dice, and our final Geeks of the Week. So where would you like to start tonight, Dr. Neifer?
Well, I don't think it'd be too big of a rabbit hole, but let's start with Apple tonight. And I know that you started with an article about the ongoing battle between Apple and Epic. So what's news there this week, sir?
Okay, so this is challenging to try and understand. The headline from Ars Technica on October 11th is Apple tries to block Epic's court win before it takes effect on December 9th. And there's actually a related article that I just dropped in under Google, which we might pick up too, since it also relates to Epic. But this is an example of one of these issues, which is fairly complex and challenging. And since we have articles about it periodically and talk about it, it's helping me to understand what the issues are here. But basically, Apple kicked Epic, which is the creator of Fortnite as well as other games, off of the App Store because Epic was flagrantly violating the contract and allowing folks to access their own store directly and circumventing Apple's historic 30% cut that they take from sales that are in the App Store. So Epic filed a lawsuit, and a few weeks ago, or maybe it was a couple months ago, I don't know, it was a little while back, we talked about it, and it was interesting because both parties claimed victory. Apple in part because they weren't declared a monopoly, but Epic was required by the lawsuit, by the order, to pay the amount that they didn't pay to Apple, as breach of contract. But the judge also said that essentially Apple had to allow other, payment options besides the App Store, and kind of had to open the floodgates. So what Apple has done is it's seeking a stay of the order, because this is obviously it's going to cost them a lot of money to let iOS apps link to other payment options. And they're claiming security risks. And they're also, claiming that, well, this is real interesting. At the end of the article, it says, Apple cites Epic's unclean hands. Apple, this is from the claim, says the doctrine of unclean hands applies squarely here. Rather than file a lawsuit for declaratory and injunctive relief, Epic developed a sophisticated plan to surreptitiously deliver a Trojan horse update of Fortnite to Apple, and then later activate a hotfix to bypass Apple's IAP system. And anyway, so there's some more that I hadn't read before about what Epic did. There's just tons of bad blood here. And so this gets into some deep weeds as far as the law and how it applies. But the bottom line is consumers are wondering, is this going to happen? Is this going to mean, a better deal, that things are going to be less expensive because Apple's not taking their cut? Or, is Epic just going to, to keep all of that? And the article, which is related to this that I put under Google, is from 9 to 5 Google on October 12th. It says, Google countersues Epic Games for willfully breaching Play Store contract with Fortnite stunt. And so it wasn't just Apple that was dealing with this. It was Google as well, even though Google allows for and did allow for its own alternative payment system against its contract. Apparently, Fortnite, this is the quote, willfully breached the DDA by submitting a version of Fortnite for publication with a payment method other than Google Play. So Google doesn't have that prohibition that you can do something in another place, but if you're inside the App Store and in the app you've gotten from the Play Store, you have to comply and pay Google. So anyway, it's a fight over money. It's a fight over who gets to control things. And it's going to be interesting because it was really, I thought it was weird when this hearing came out and both Epic was saying, hey, we won, it was great, and Apple was saying, hey, we're vindicated, it's great. And you're like, all right, I don't think either of those claims are the full truth. So help us, Dr. Neiffer, clarify it all for us. What does this mean and what am I missing?
Well, I mean, hearing these additional stories, right? I guess what I would say is that, and it'd probably be a good idea to do the other Epic article in their fight with Apple here in a moment, but I guess that makes him sound like a less sympathetic plaintiff than in their lawsuit made them sound like with Apple. Because if their goal is to actually circumvent the system and not just prove that the system or not just use legal means to prove that the system is unfair for some reason, I would agree that the doctrine of unclean hands in my mind would apply there. I am not a judge, however, at any local, state, or federal level, so I am not the arbiter of that. But I mean, I think it makes it a little more complex, and I do think that Epic did a pretty good job of claiming that they believe that the 30% that Apple does, and my understanding is the Play Store percentage is a little more complex, because they're a little more willing to cut deals with companies, I think, than Apple is. But still, it is a significant percentage. I guess I feel less bad about I feel less bad about the situation for companies like Epic if they're gonna actually push or I guess violate rules in that way. And it also tells me too that, I mean, one of the reasons why I did want to move off the Play Store and onto iOS devices is that I did have some larger concerns about security, and the bottom line is that I feel like that Apple is slightly more secure of an environment when it comes to app reviews before they allow them in the store than the Google Play Store is. And as a reminder, on the Google platform, you can install any app you want by just turning off verified sources. And I believe actually Fortnite, you could download that directly from their website. That was one of the ways they were working around the Play Store. That is legitimate. You have to turn your security off to make that happen, but that was a legitimate way of doing that. That in fact, a lot of apps ask you to turn that off to install directly. So I guess it's really hard to pick, good guys and bad guys. I'll put that in quotation marks in a lot of these debates, because the bottom line is that both sides are looking to make money. And when it comes to, picking someone who's on the right side of this, listening to that story, I guess I'm less inclined to go with Epic versus Google, and maybe big picture Epic versus Apple too. So do you want to cover that other article regarding Epic and Apple? I'm sorry, Epic and no, it was both, right?
I did. That was the Google.
Okay,
the Google one, the 9 to 5 Google. So
yeah,
unless
okay,
there's another one. So yeah, and how does this affect schools? I don't know. This is more kind of on a consumer level, but it also belies the complexity that's involved here and these ecosystems and the ways that companies are allowed to enact policies that protect them from competition, that, protect their platform. It's important from a security standpoint for sure. I think that's what I'll be most interested in, is whether the judge, buys that argument as far as security, because in terms of payment processing and hacking and the growth of cybercrime, I mean that is a real deal, and it's huge. And so if any app developer is able to link out to any kind of payment system, I mean that's a huge potential. And what Apple says in this is they don't have the resources to be able to check all of those links that's in every single one of their apps. So anyway, I'm not a judge either, but I would certainly be paying attention to that, and it's going to be, interesting to see, what the ruling is here. So I think the big thing was that Apple wasn't, ruled a monopoly, and there wasn't going to be some kind of a ruling about, we got the power of the App Store has to be broken. And as we probably will talk later with the tech correction and all the talk about Facebook and that great TikTok article you put in, I mean, there's a lot of companies exerting a lot of power over our lives, via technology. And there's a lot of questions about the role of regulation in all of this. So it's an evolving and continuing story. Perhaps if we continue to talk about it a few more weeks, I'll have my head around it a little bit more. But I almost reread these articles too, because it's pretty, it's very detailed as far as, the legal theories that apply and these kinds of things. I'm not optimistic this is going to make a huge difference for consumers, or that, I don't know. I think Apple's already Epic has cracked open the floodgates, but and they did a little bit already with Netflix and things, because there are some deals that are being cut, not nearly as much as what Google is doing. But
Right.
Anyway, I don't think this is going to have immediate huge, impacts on us as consumers, but certainly it's something my kids know about, and they know that, I've got a lot of Fortnite players in middle school, and they knew that, hey, that platform is no longer available on Apple unless you downloaded it before. And that's one of the interesting things in the Google case too, is that if you had downloaded it previously and you had it on your device and you hadn't erased your device, you still had it and you could use it. So anyway, this will be a continuing issue that I'm sure we have not heard the last of.
Yep, absolutely. And then let me just do one other quick Apple article here, in part because I expect there to be some interesting announcements next week. Apple has an event on October 18th. That's Monday, October 18th. And when I first saw the email, I was like, oh, that's weird. Why would they do it on a Monday morning? Like, they never do it on a Monday morning. They always do that on a Tuesday morning. And then I realized, as we'll talk about in a moment, there is a pre-existing Google event on October 19th, and that would be Tuesday morning. So I would imagine that that is not by accident, that they happen to be on a Monday morning. A lot of speculation about what is going to be announced, but there seems to be some agreement that it's probably new MacBook Pros with the M1X or M2 chip. Most sources seem to suggest the M1X is likely the piece there, with a 14 and a 16-inch MacBook Pro likely to be released on Monday. And that would be Pro models that I would assume are adding some things to them to distinguish them from what a lot of people referred to as entry-level laptops that were released with the M1 chip last year. And I have to say, now having used these entry-level devices for the last, 9 months or so, they are anything but. They're really very fast and very competent machines, but new form factors are expected. A lot of people think that the new MacBook Pros will have more ports on them and are likely probably not to get rid of the USB-C ports because that Apple doesn't backtrack like that. And I think that I kind of agree with him. The USB-C is the future, but it's likely to have either additional ports or perhaps a new way to charge. I've heard of maybe a new MagSafe charger that is reflective of that technology, but we'll have to see. And so I will say it's my birthday this Saturday. I've been thinking about buying myself a birthday present because that's what I do. That's what happens when you live the double income, no kid lifestyle. And I'm not entirely sure I would buy myself a MacBook Pro, but if there's new AirPods, I am very tempted by maybe a third generation AirPod Pro. So we'll have to see how that plays out in the coming days. But after I got that email, I decided not to buy myself a birthday present this week. So
Jason, you need to either buy a Rectech RT700 pellet smoker or a Green Mountain Jim Bowie, if you want to go a little less expensive. I'm going to tell you the positive rewards of that.
Well, it's so funny you should say that, Wes, because my wife is she's maybe the most thoughtful gift giver I've ever met in my entire life, but she's been kind of looking at options, and we had talked about there's a cool outdoor pizza oven you can buy now that you can hook up to gas that has it's basically like a little it's not quite brick, but it's got the nice stone on the bottom of it, so you can make pizzas outdoors. And then our barbecue could use replacement. I've also looked at the Blackstone big gas griddles that people have, and I love that concept. I would probably use that pretty frequently, but it is indeed true that smoking equipment could be ultimately on that list.
All right, so this isn't our normal topic, but okay. The Green Mountain has a great pizza oven attachment. I haven't made a video with it yet, but it's $150. You set it right in there, and you can crank that sucker up to 650, 700 degrees on the pizza stone. It's amazing. We've been cooking with the cauliflower crust. I've been doing chicken pizzas or whatever, and so. And then we'll talk about Instagram and the dark side of Instagram, but some of the positive side would be targeted ads. And surprise, surprise, Facebook, Instagram, Zuckerberg know that I like smoking. So there's a website. This is a completely unsponsored, shout out called Barbecue Hacks, and they have a griddle attachment for $150. So your pellet smoker can be your pizza oven with the pizza stone and everything up to 700 degrees and all that. Because I was looking closely at those Oni grills and whether it's wood or gas or whatever. But then I was also looking at a Blackstone, thinking about a griddle, and lo and behold, you can just put that on your pellet smoker too. So I'll have to see about making a little video about, because I don't think I've done any videos about pizza ovens like that. And so anyway, yes, that's all good stuff. Okay, so 2 Apple thoughts. Number 1, the event. I saw the tweet today for the event. I liked it. And then Apple immediately has this bot that replied and said, "You're all set. We'll notify you." And I think I mentioned after the last event, I knew that it was doing that, as far as like if you interact with that, they're going to keep you updated. I think that's just pretty cool. That's a cool use of Twitter that Apple's doing. The second thing that I have to say is that I'm holding in my hand a larger iPhone. But this is the iPhone 11 Pro Max.
Oh, nice.
And I picked it up for $600. So if I can sell my SE2 for $300, this will be about a $300 acquisition. I went to the Apple Store and actually held the 13 Pro, I guess. It's not. Is it called a Pro Max or just Pro?
There's both. There's a 13
Pro
Pro
Max.
and 13 Pro Max. Yeah.
I mean, it's a hefty. It's a hefty.
It is.
Kind of brick. So this is a bit lighter. But anyway, I'm excited. And on the note of videos and all that kind of stuff, Rachel has had the 11 Pro in the family for a while, and I would rarely borrow it. So now I'll be using that new device. I probably ought to get a lapel mic to really up my game. But yes, the temptations to acquire new Apple things are, here. And I think that, well, here's a related article to throw in. I put this one under hardware. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with the supply chain. But Ars Technica on October 11th had an article, pandemic-related supply issues send U.S. PC market into decline. Now, there's also in the article the fact that a ton of people have upgraded, right? I mean, during the pandemic, there were a lot of folks that upgraded their technology gear. And so there's different reasons for the decline. They say there's growth globally. In the United States, there's decline. But I mean, bottleneck supply chains are a real thing. And so, as we've talked about before, when it comes to school orders about things or individual orders, it'll be interesting to see what falls out with this. Obviously, Apple, every time the new event comes out and new products, they want everybody to rush out and get them. But we're definitely looking at a new laptop for our high school senior, thinking about college. one of the things that happens when new devices come out is the supply chain, peters out or whatever, goes dry with those older ones. But sometimes you can get some discounted deals on the past generation devices. Sometimes you can do that for school. Sometimes you can do that individually. But I would certainly echo what Jason said. I've been using the M1 processor. I got to use it a little bit in the spring for a month or so. And then since the summer, it is absolutely fantastic. I mean, it is everything that I want or need a laptop to be. I just, can't say enough positive about it. So it's exciting to see what Apple's going to come out with. And the other thing I'll say, because I always mention this, I think, watch it for the video, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they are just going to continue to probably knock our socks off. And I don't know how they're going to do something cooler than having Tim Cook, walk out of Death Valley or whatever they did at the start of that last one. But anyway, they're pushing the envelope in a lot of different ways. And so if you don't want to hear us gush about Apple stuff, you might just skip the next episode, because after an Apple event, we're tending to, we need to do a Google show, Jason. We talked about the Chrome show. So I don't know if we can still do that if you can still do that with as much love as you could have, a couple years ago. But it's glad to see innovation continuing. So.
Well, and we'll use that as a transition then to the October 19th event that's happening over at Google, and they're everyone's calling it a Pixel Fall event, and I haven't seen any media about this, but I would assume that there's not going to be a Chromebook released, and a lot of people thought that this would be about the time that a next generation to the Chromebook Go, which was I think it was a 2019 release of that particular platform. And so I haven't seen any media suggesting it's coming, and I'm quoting a Digital Trends article from October 11th that has kind of proposed things that we might see. One of them is there will definitely be a Pixel 6, and almost everyone agrees there's probably going to be two Pixels, a Pixel 6 and a Pixel 6 Pro. I've got something I want to talk about a little bit later that's related to that. There are rumors of a Pixel Pass, which is kind of an interesting prospect. They're trying to like bundle together some hardware and some services together. And the Pixel Pass would be kind of like the Apple iPhone upgrade program and Apple One all wrapped into one, but it would include YouTube Premium, the Play Pass on Google's Play Store, which gets you access to a bunch of apps that cost money, but for free. I've done it for a little while on Android, and it was okay. Pretty decent apps on there. The Google Fi cellular service, Google One, which gives you access to cheap Google Drive storage, and then a financing plan, a low interest financing plan might be part of that. Again, interesting. I do think that Google is working really hard to try to catch some of that Apple cachet, the everything works together cachet, which I think is really quite unique to the Apple feature set. There are some rumors of a Pixel Fold, which I'll be very frank, I think foldable phones are silly at this point. They just seem too fragile with not a lot of payoff in response. And to be honest, if there was something really there, I think Apple would have developed in that direction. And then heavily rumored, but no real hardware leaks, potentially a Pixel Watch that would be Google's somewhat desperate attempt to get back into the watch business, which kind of lost me as a customer. Actually, was the lack of a watch piece. But so I know you're Apple Universe focused, Wes, but anything interesting to you on that list?
Well, let's be clear. We are very much a Google Home, Google Assistant family with multiple devices. A Google, what is it called? The smart, whatever that smaller smart display, in the kitchen now to cook with. And I'm not buying it. I haven't bought any Madam A, Amazon devices, and we've actually invested in some Nest cameras, a Nest doorbell and a Nest, indoor camera too. So I would be real interested in the IoT stuff. They've just updated the Google Nest camera. In fact, I waited, and I pre-ordered that camera, and it came, a month or so ago. So those are the things I would be probably more interested in. But actually, when you talked about another event, I thought you were talking about Wednesday's event, which is for Samsung. And so I put that one in. So folks, if you are a person who loves tech news, we've got a week for you, because starting off with Monday's Apple event, we've got Google's event, and then you're going to have Samsung's event, which is going to be on Wednesday. So, yeah, this is interesting. It's sort of the way of, we don't have the trade shows anymore. Again, Steve Jobs was very prescient, I think. And, what a bummer when when he decided Apple wasn't going to Macworld anymore. Like, what the heck is that? But, the world has shifted in terms of how they get people's attention and get news out there. And so anyway, I don't know if we've ever had three major events, including Apple, Google, Samsung. Those are all three heavy hitters. I don't know who else is left. Is Lenovo going to do an event on Thursday? Probably not. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see. And we want to continue, hopefully, to see that innovation. So I would be most interested in the IoT stuff, and if they're going to do anything, Chrome wise. But we'll see.
So a couple other interesting Google articles this week. Two I want to bunch together for a second. This has to do with the Pixel 6. 9 to 5 Google reported October 13th that the Pixel 6 will probably be released with a promise of 4 major Android upgrades, which is an incredible piece of news, considering right now Google only promises 2 major upgrades, and those happen yearly, and oftentimes they'll do a third. In fact, I think on most of the Pixel's phone, they've done a third. And I want to couple that with another article from 9 to 5 Google a few days earlier. Nokia, which is not the brand it used to be, it's really just basically a brand for hire, but there's a Nokia tablet that's being released called the T20, which is an Android tablet that it's a 1080p screen, apparently a larger screen, but it has a smaller form factor. So I would assume smaller bezels and some kind of hardware to make it feel svelter, but it's being released with 3 years of promised upgrades. And what's interesting about this is that it feels like Apple's starting to nudge the market along a little bit. And we talked about, particularly 2 weeks ago, but I think we've had this 3 or 4 times in the last couple months, that Apple does release phone upgrades much longer than anyone else does. And in particular, we're talking about Android manufacturers, where unfortunately, a lot of Android manufacturers don't even do one major upgrade and will stop security upgrades after, the initial release of hardware. And there hasn't been a lot of like at least published big problems with that, right? It's not, I would imagine that there would be a bigger shift in this market if 1.2 million phones in the United States allowed someone to look at your banking information or something along those lines. But I think it's really encouraging that the Android system is trying to do more upgrades, because the bottom line is when you buy a phone in 2021, even if you're buying a phone that's intended to be for a more budget market, there absolutely are probably people that will keep that phone for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, and we really need to have our people, taking those phones and getting security upgrades with them, frequently and for a long time. So I thought that was kind of an interesting phenomenon.
Yeah, definitely. And I wonder, have any of the major Google third-party phone manufacturers really gone out and left the market entirely, or how vibrant? I mean, I know that Google continues to have worldwide a larger market share than Apple. And we're not talking about Huawei at all here, I guess. But anyway, are you keeping the pulse of that? I mean, maybe that's something that we're going to hear in the event. It would be the status of Google manufacturers. Although like you said, they're going to be pushing their own devices, their Pixel line, perhaps, harder.
Yeah.
And they're going to be trying to say, hey, go out and buy a Samsung. So.
Yeah, and I think that it's always a topic at the Google Developers event in the late spring. Like, that's always a topic that I think they want manufacturers to promise more updates. But that's the one of the inherent problems in Android's open source model, even though that they have an alliance of Android users. It's like the Open Handset Alliance. You don't hear about as much anymore. But one of the things that they wanted with people that signed on to the Open Handset Alliance was a guarantee of 2 years of security updates for every phone. But I think Google will certainly make itself more competitive, but I think it helps nudge the market in that direction if they're going to promise 4 years of upgrades. Because meaningfully, then you could buy a phone new and probably be perfectly safe for 4 or 5 years with all those upgrades. And I would imagine security upgrades happen for, a year or so after the major upgrade. And I think we have to be more conscious of the fact that, phone equipment is going to be held by most users for much longer than 2 years.
Do you want to pick up that Adobe Acrobat editor extension?
Yeah,
That's
this
pretty
is super
exciting.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, 95 Google reported on the 12th of October that the Adobe extension for Chrome, it's also for Edge too, but the reason why this is interesting to me is really the Chromebook aspect of this is that they now will allow light editing in the Adobe extension, which adds that much more functionality in my mind to Chromebooks. And there are plenty of third-party apps, and I believe the Adobe Acrobat Reader app for Windows and Mac allows you to do some light editing too, but they're adding that function into the Chrome plugin, which means the Chromebooks would have that ability. I will say that, frustration is probably kind of a strong word there, but I have noticed over time that that's one of the deficiencies if you're on if you're in Chrome world, is that if you are kind of stuck in on a Chromebook and don't have other actions and you need to fill out a PDF, that's not always as easy as it probably should be. But I think that's a really interesting development on behalf of Adobe, because I think it adds a lot of functionality to Chrome world.
Not a geek of the week, but I'll mention DocHub.com. That's the web-based tool that we use this week even to help my daughter fill out some college applications and things like that. But yeah, PDF it's like JPEG, it's a format now that is very ubiquitous, but it's still a little tricky, when you're on a Chromebook to be like, okay, how am I going to edit this? Yep. I think Squid is the app that we're using now. We use a free version of it, both as a sketchnoting and drawing app in the Google Play Store, but also I'm 90% sure it's PDF editing. I don't think I've used it for that, but that was one of the reasons why we downloaded it. So anyway, it's called Squid. If anybody knows of a better free app, Squid, take notes and mark up PDFs. My kids have been doing sketch notes for the last couple weeks on Chromebooks, and Squid is now the app of choice. So do you have another app that you do like on the Chrome OS for PDF editing or for?
No, to be frank. And in fact, I've had such a hard time there that I will oftentimes remote desktop into a Windows machine to do that editing for me. What I would say is that there are a lot of third-party apps here. Many of them, you can use once a month for free or twice a month for free.
Sure.
And that's been problematic for me, especially since there are so many free options on Mac and PC that will do that for you without any limitations. So I think it's wonderful news, and I will use that. That's something that I wouldn't have traditionally installed the Adobe Acrobat plugin for Chrome, but in this particular case, I think it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, I think we cleared out all the Google articles, actually.
Yep,
So.
I think we are. So where would you like to go next, sir?
Well, let's. Why don't we talk about this really excellent article you put in about TikTok? Under the tech correction, we've got a couple articles today, and this one's The Atlantic from October the 10th. 1 billion TikTok users understand what Congress doesn't. This was your article, so you want to take a first stab at it, or?
Yeah. So, the big picture here is that, all this hand wringing is going on right now about Facebook, and to a lesser extent, Twitter, Instagram, other major platforms. But Facebook is getting all the ire right now. Now, let me be clear, that ire's probably earned, so it's not. I don't want to make it sound like that Facebook's being unfairly targeted here, because I think that they absolutely need some scrutiny. But the writer of this, Evelyn Duchek is her name. She's a doctoral student at Harvard Law School and a senior fellow, a research fellow for the Knight First Amendment Institute at Columbia. She makes a really interesting argument, which is that TikTok, in a lot of ways, has aimed itself at a very popular youth audience. And they've managed to avoid scrutiny, even though there is a lot of mis and disinformation on TikTok. There are significant political forces afoot there. Lots and lots and lots and lots of people are utilizing this platform to spread things that are somewhat nefarious. And one of the reasons why they aren't getting scrutiny is because everyone dismisses this as insubstantial, because it's an app that a lot of people associate with dancing. And to be clear, there is an awful lot of dancing on TikTok, and dances spread pretty virally on there. And when I say dances, I mean 30-40 second dances that go along with a piece of music that's spread around, and there's certainly entertainment value to that, but that perception that it's insubstantial means that a lot of people simply aren't seeing this as a threat, even though you may remember back to 2020, when at one point then President Trump was going to force TikTok to be purchased by a company in the United States or be banned here. There were a lot of people that banned TikTok in sensitive situations, military bases. If I remember correctly, the CIA banned it from employees' phones at one point, because there was some concern of security because of the association of the company with the government of China. It's a really important point, because I mean, there are a lot of young folks on TikTok. It is a phenomenon. And I can tell you from my own experience that there is quite a bit of political debate and mis and disinformation on there, ranging from COVID-19 misinformation to political misinformation. And the dancing may draw you in, but once you get there, the algorithm is probably going to deliver to you other stuff.
So the other thing that's in this article is how, Donald Trump was really mad at TikTok for a while, and China, and so we were hearing a whole lot about it, and it seems like his attention went elsewhere, and so did the rest of the country. So it does make you wonder how much of the security threat was real and how much of that was politics and political theater. But I mean, I would love, and if anybody knows of this, I guess I should Google for this and look for it, but I don't know. I haven't seen or actually used any media literacy lessons that really address disinformation on TikTok, but I'm in the midst of my Fruit Loop conspiracy theories unit with my sixth graders, talking about the moon landings and looking at videos where people are claiming they're hoaxes, and how do we apply the SIFT media literacy strategy and all this stuff. It would really, really be relevant and wonderful to use TikTok examples.
Yep.
I did a link today about how there's 21 or something really viral and popular TikTok channels that aren't real people, and so there's an entertainment company that's created them, but people really don't care because they're funny and they like them. But man, to think about the rise of influencers and how folks have such power to put ideas into people's minds and then to become a trusted part of, somebody's information landscape and just media landscape. It really, I mean, I listened to a podcast called You're Wrong About today, and they have a episode on cancel culture, which there's some profanity in this, so you don't want to play it aloud at work probably. But anyway, it talks about just the phenomenon of influencers and, how really fretting about quote unquote cancel culture isn't nearly as much the issue as this rise of, and Jason's gone. I wonder if I have dropped him, or maybe I think I'm still alive. He's back. I mentioned cancel culture, ladies and gentlemen, and I assure you, I have not canceled Dr. Knifer.
I'm having some hardware issues. My monitor started blinking. I just unplugged one, then my internet went. I know. So
I'm sitting there going, "Am I still here? Am I still alive? Am I alive? Am I dead?" Anyway, just like the ability of smaller voices and smaller groups to be able to be amplified and to be able to have power. I mean, there's I don't know if Clay Shirky's writing anything else. I was thinking about this, and I need to look up his work now, because his book, Here Comes Everybody, was just really a very thought-provoking read, years ago. But anyway, the point of this Atlantic article is TikTok is a big deal. It is being ignored by Congress. And it's probably being ignored by a lot of teachers too, right? And the fact, I'd ask my kids about this, and some of them knew it. Who owns TikTok? It's a Chinese company. What is that company trying to do? They're trying to develop AI. So I'll actually segue to two fairly mind-blowing articles that might not be as directly applicable to like the classroom tomorrow, but these are just, the quotes here are crazy. All right, this is Slate from October 11th. U.S. has lost AI race to China, according to former software chief at the Pentagon. So this man, Nicholas Chalian, was the head of basically cyber. He was the first chief software officer for the Air Force. So it wasn't Pentagon wide, it was for the Air Force. But he's from Silicon Valley, and he's hired to bring the agility and flexibility, knowledge and savvy of Silicon Valley, and bring that to contracting into the military to be able to help out. Well, he resigned in frustration, and so he is now given several interviews. Interestingly, his interview is with the Financial Times, which is behind a paywall. So I pay for the Washington Post now, and we get the New York Times at school. So anyway, I'm not going to pay for the Financial Times right now. But these articles, that one from Slate, and then this one is even better. This is from The Drive on October 13th, and the headline here is, ex-Air Force tech boss eviscerates Pentagon for already losing the AI race in China. And one of the things that's just shocking about this is he says in 15 or 20 years, it's not going to matter. China is so far ahead, and they are poised to just, not only because of their cooperation, of course, in their totalitarian government, which I don't think we want to emulate, force all the cooperation of their companies, but the size of their investment, the ways they're not, hung up on, for instance, the F-35 and these other kinds of weapon systems. I mentioned this to my kids today as we were talking about TikTok. We do these little wonder links at the start of class. And it is such a big deal as far as the AI race. And, we need to be hopefully energizing students about the importance of coding skills, not only for their own vocational needs, but also for, the defense of our nation and really the defense of the planet. I mean, we are this interconnected world where, certainly the founding fathers who wrote our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence didn't foresee this and how this plays out for politics, but there's so many different ways that this is playing out. And so anyway, these were just sort of mind-blowing articles and quotations from a very, very smart and knowledgeable, leader, not only from Silicon Valley, but also from the past 3 years from the Pentagon and from Washington, D.C. And it connects to what we were just talking about with TikTok, because, TikTok is a Chinese-owned company, and AI relies on data, and there is just an incredible trove. In that Atlantic article, I think they have the statistics. TikTok has become, I think, the second only to Facebook. Did they say 3 billion users? There's some crazy statistics about how many downloads it's had and how many users it has. And again, I think a lot of people are kind of asleep to that, but this plays in huge ways to artificial intelligence and the ways that facial recognition and these technologies work. AI and machine learning rely upon troves of data, and the folks who have created TikTok are really pretty genius. They're not getting headlines in the same way that Facebook are, in part because it's even more opaque and hidden in terms of how they decide to filter and moderate content and how all that stuff's happening. There are no whistleblowers coming out of TikTok in China, the way that we've seen that in Facebook. So did you happen to see either of these articles, Jason, about this tech boss Air Force guy resigning? And
I just kind of previewed them when you were introducing them. I would say that what my experience with TikTok is, and I have to say I'm a pretty regular user of TikTok now. I'm not posting there. I thought about maybe, I don't know. I don't know if anyone really wants to hear from a 40-something, now hippie, long-haired EdTech online learning distance tech guy.net, right? So I'm not sure if I'm really the right audience for that there. Even though I, can put together a appropriately snarky video in 1 minute or 3 minutes or less. So, but what's really interesting about it is I do think the algorithm is pretty accurate, right? Like it does draw me in, and I have to say, I've lost 30, 40 minutes at a time to TikTok, right? And it's just enough time to keep you interested and present enough content to be of maybe of value, and then it moves on to something else. And I've heard a lot of people criticize TikTok because that's what they don't like about it, is then it moves too quickly onto something else, right? How do you pay attention to all that? But I think in kind of our fast food media world that we are engaging in, it's probably the kind of thing that probably does keep especially younger users pretty engaged. So I would say that, and we don't really know the relationship with, I think it's ByteDance that owns TikTok. We have no idea what that relationship looks like. I think we talked about this either earlier this year or last year, but there was an instance, and I think I've got my facts right here, that apparently the voiceover technology that appeared on TikTok, there was a suit against TikTok because it was the same technology that had been sold to a Chinese government contractor. Someone did voiceovers. I believe it was the same woman that did like the Salt Lake City airport. She's a prominent voiceover artist in the United States, and she sold a lot of recordings to a government agency for the purpose of she thought to teach an English language, and they ultimately used them to create a voice imprint to do voiceovers, electronically generated voiceovers on TikTok. She sued because that's not what she licensed her materials for, and they moved to a different voice. For the record, a worse voice, in my humble opinion, than the original one. But like the bottom line is that they do fly under the radar, right? I think this Atlantic article is correct that it may have influence, especially over, maybe a whole generation of younger users, and we're just not having that conversation. And by the way, 20-somethings aren't on Facebook, right? That's not where the predominant number of 20-something, so that's, older Gen Z, younger millennials are located at. They're on TikTok, and that's TikTok and Snapchat, which is still also very popular with that set. They're not on Facebook. And so we're all wringing our hands about Facebook when maybe the bigger risk, or as big of a risk, is in something like a TikTok.
So 2 thoughts. Number one, when you talk about the speed of the changing of video and all that, I mean, it's important for us as teachers to have a sense of the culture and the world in which our students are living. Much like if we were to go to another country and teach, we're probably not going to just walk into that classroom and assume, hey, everybody's coming right out of the same model and paradigm and understanding that I am, coming from the United States. Thinking about the experiences that students have and the degree to which media is used and students are invited to use media, I think it's really, really important. And maybe we're going to do a parent university. Actually, we've just made the final plans on November 2nd. It's going to be about influencers on TikTok and on YouTube. We've got about 4 high school students that are going to talk a little bit about that. And anyway, these are really, really good and important issues to talk with students about. And I think I'll do some lessons with my students. I did a little bit last year about influencers that they pay attention to and that they follow. And the other thing I'm going to say is, okay, so you're spending time on TikTok. I thought, oh, I'll log in because I do have an account. I've like posted one video or two videos or something. I will not show the picture because it's actually a bit racy. But the first question after I log in, first off, it tried to get me to log in with my phone number first. Don't want to do that. I'm going to use my email because I don't really want to, the phone number now is kind of like a social security number for connecting us with data brokers. But then what does it say when I log in successfully? TikTok would like to access your contacts.
Yep.
Sync your contacts to easily find people you know on TikTok. Your contacts will only be used to help you connect with friends. Jason and I both, I think, told the story of using, oh gosh, what was it called? The audio program that Clubhouse, yes. Yeah. And I mean, the moment I clicked it, I was like, oh, I just sent all my contacts. Once you've sent them, you can't bring them back. So, literally, if I tap OK, I'm sending thousands of contacts, because that's how many I have in my address book at this point in my life, to China to be able to connect the dots. And all right, so here it is, surveillance capitalism. This is a teachable moment. So why do we probably not want to allow, contacts and stuff like that to synchronize? There's good reasons for that. So,
yep.
Oh my, so many distractions. Well, hey, we've got about 8 minutes left. What else do we want to try to hit? How about this PC Magazine article about Americans live on the internet but don't know much about it? I think that was last week. Let's do that.
Yeah, I'm glad, because this is one I want to get to tonight. This article, I've been noticing these more and more lately, that generally speaking, like when I read tech media articles, right, that I agree with what they're trying to say. And yet in the last 6 weeks or so, I'm finding at least 2 articles a week that I think are giving flatly bad advice to people, right? And, I'm a bit of an expert here. Dr. Fryer is a bit of an expert here. We're not just casual consumers of this. A lot of our day jobs and our professional time spent this. But so the Chandra Steele writes on October 6th that this was a survey by highspeedinternet.com, and it asked 1,000 Americans a few questions. And while 74% said they know how the internet works, only 20% got the questions right. And I would say that not only are a lot of these like they don't matter, right? Like I just don't think that what they're asking here matters for understanding the internet. I think there are implications to making or to this. So the idea here is that the survey said that people are just ignorant and dumb about the internet, and that has implications. So here's examples of things that they're asking. 77% of respondents said they didn't know which mobile carrier has the fastest 5G. And I just don't think that matters, right? I mean, and 5G in a lot of ways is a marketing gimmick. In fact, we talked about this when 5G was first rolling out. There's a lot of 5G that's pretty short of 5G. 62% of people didn't know what the G stands for. I don't think that matters either, right? But they were talking about, in kind of in a mocking tone, things that as examples of things, like 60% means more Wi-Fi bars means faster speeds. Well, that's actually kind of true, right? Like it's complicated. It's not as simple as saying that's what that means. It means what your signal is. But if you're farther away from your base station, one of the ways that your phone/device will compensate for that is it will try a slower speed of throughput to make that happen. So no, that's not what that means. It means it means you have a better signal to wherever your router is located at. But that doesn't it's more complicated than these questions. And so I guess the reason I want to highlight this article is that you used to see the stuff with Americans don't understand anything about history and government. Those weren't always completely unfair either, right? Because I do think there is a lot of both misnomers and some wide gaps in knowledge when it comes to the history of our nation and how our government works. But just because you can't name who the 31st president was, which isn't it just doesn't matter, right? And by the way, the 31st president was Herbert Hoover. But the point of this being a history teacher, but the point of this being that I just don't think that kind of stuff matters as much. What does matter is having kids understand how their devices work from a software standpoint and some basic hardware troubleshooting, but then how they're engaging with their device. And if you're listening to this podcast regularly, you know that Wes and I kind of rant about this all the time, right? That it's important to have conversations in your classrooms about how kids are using their devices. But the bottom line is that just because you don't know which carrier has the fastest 5G, you don't need to know that information, to be a successful user. By the way, I don't know the answer to that question either. My guess is Verizon, but it's probably that's marketing, right? Like, who knows what the real answer to that is?
Well, it certainly matters for us to understand it enough as leaders to be able to architect some reasonable regulation that's not going to
Yeah.
break the internet, or have disastrous consequences, intended or unintended. There are some statistics in that article that definitely do matter. Like 30% of those surveyed believe in a 5G conspiracy theory, and
Yeah.
22% think 5G may be a health risk. Those are huge numbers. 1 in 5, 1 in 3. So those are just things that point to overall media literacy and the fact that we live in a polluted information landscape, and we need to try to media literacy educate ourselves as much as we can. But I don't know that by itself is gonna get us out of the difficulty that we're in. So yeah, challenges. All right. Well, I think we've only got about 3 or 4 more minutes left. Is there
Sure.
anything we want to hit before we?
No, I think anything else we can push to next week. So
Okay. All right. Well, I'm just going to do one geek of the week, and this is an article I happened to find thanks to the algorithm of Twitter. So Jason Bennett, who I follow on Twitter, happened to share this. The article is called "IoT Hacking and Rickrolling My High School District," and it's written by I think a current high school senior who was able to port scan his district network, and since his freshman year, basically he's had control over all of the digital signage systems. Now, an interesting thing is the system that he's describing here is the system I think we were using initially when I came to Cassidy in 2015 for about 2 years. It was the same one my church had used. It was because it was freedigitalsignage.com or something like that. These different players. We ended up eventually going to Chrome Bits, which you can't buy anymore, but the Chrome OS and Chrome Sign Builder, and being able to do that, which I think is a lot more secure. But wow, mind-blowing article. If you don't already have kids that are port scanning your network to try to see what kind of vulnerabilities are there, you can bet that you are going to be having them soon, and you're just probably naive if you think you haven't had kids doing that already. Anyway, I'm thankful that I'm not responsible for all that, but network segmentation, having different virtual LANs, not allowing somebody to just come jack into the network and boom, they can access security cameras, they can access, servers, they can access printers, all kinds of things. This is a mind-blowing article, and I read most of it. It gets into some really specific details about how he pulled off this hack. But to his credit and the credit of his district, they didn't press charges. They wrote a very thorough, sort of penetration test analysis of all the things that they found, and are helping their own district's IT department, them being these high school kids, to become more secure and not leave their network so open to these kinds of security hacks. So it's kind of a mind-blowing article, and I definitely would recommend not only reading that, but you might forward that on to your technology director or your tech department and say, hey, we ever thought about something like this happening at our school? because they played the Rick Astley video in complete synchronization over every single digital signage device in the entire school, which is, a rather harmless prank, but also a pretty impressive one to pull off as high school students.
Yep, absolutely. So great article. And then I want to share something that I've actually had a couple of good experiences with. There's a service called Trim. And what Trim does is that you give them your credit card number, and then you upload your bills, and they try to negotiate lower rates for you. And apparently it works with cable, phone, hospital bills. They said they will negotiate for you. I tried it a couple of years ago, and they managed to knock off $10 a month off of my cable bill, which was just cable internet, which it still is just that. They asked for a third of that money back. So $10 a month over 12. It was a 12-month discount. It netted them $40. But I went back to them and had them redo that because it's been a couple of years, and they sent me a text message to remind me, and they managed to take a whole quarter of my bill off, so saving me $25 a month. That means I'll owe them a cool $100, but saving me $300 over the next year. And so asktrim.com is the name of the service. I'm actually going to try them with my parents who are paying. They like and need, well, needs a strong word, cable TV. We've tried to work on maybe some apps for them, and they're just not. They're a bit convinced that their ways are best, but they're paying a very high cable bill, and they've tried to negotiate it down. But I think I'm going to stick Trim on them and see what happens. So I asked trim.com.
That is fantastic.
Okay, Wes, where can people find you on the interwebs?
I am W. Fryer on Twitter. You can go to my recently slightly updated website, westfryer.com, click the contact link, and you'll see a slew of different channels and places that I'm sharing content, to include my latest video about how to smoke eggplant and acorn squash on your pellet smoker.
Excellent.
How about you, Dr. Knifer?
I'm at Tech Savvy Teach on Twitter. That's the best place to find me. But here and now is not about smoking, although join us next week for the Meat Smoker Situation Room. But this is the EdTech Situation Room. We are a once a week podcast that tries to go through the headlines and shoot them through an educational prism. You can find us on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Mountain Time, 9 p.m. Central Time, sometime in the middle of the night UTC, thrown off by another hour when we change time in early November. But we'd love you if you join us live. You can find the link on Twitter at EdTechSR, at our website, EdTechSR. We're also live on YouTube and Facebook. If you can't join us live, however, you can find tiny downloads over at our website, edtechsr.com, along with all the links we discuss in any given week, or you can find us wherever finer podcasts are aggregated. So thanks for joining us for this episode of the EdTech Situation Room. Hope to see you next time. We wish you a great week. Stay safe, stay savvy, and good night.
Good night, everyone.